back, everyone. This is episode, what are we on, number 8? I think?
8, 9?
Yeah, something like that. St. Joseph's Workshop. I'm one of your co-hosts, Andrew Slankard, here along with Jason Marino. Our friend Alan is off traipsing through Europe right now, so he won't be joining us on this episode. Alan, we hope you're safe and enjoying yourself in Italy right now. We're all jealous. But we also want to take this moment to introduce a new addition to the podcast, our fourth co-host, Mark Irons. Mark.
Hey, how's it going? Good to be here.
Yeah, man, we're glad to finally have you join the podcast. We've toyed around with some side projects and stuff, and now you're officially part of the crew.
Yeah, no, it's great to be here. I wish I was with Alan eating gelato out in Italy, but hey.
I think we all do.
I think we all wish we were Alan right now.
I wouldn't mind being in Florence right now. That's pretty sweet.
Yes.
Yeah, no, it's good to be with you guys. Thanks for having me.
So, a little background. Mark and I have been working together for about a year now, and we started messing around with a podcast idea for him back in June, right around the time that St. Joseph's Workshop was rolling out. And
still need to get that going.
Yeah, that'll happen one day.
Still early draft phases.
Yeah. But, then as time went by, we thought, hey, Mark would be fun to have join as another host on St. Joseph's Workshop, have like a quartet. So we're just a trio right now without Alan, but we'll be a quartet once again pretty soon, I think. You want to share any more background on it?
So let's see. I'm a guy. I'm Catholic.
You're a man. You're a dude.
I'm a dude. Yeah. Do we share where we work on this podcast or no?
You could, but that's discretionary. I mean, we try to avoid that.
I don't know if I have. I mean,
okay, that's cool. Well,
for those who don't know, I work.
Do we want to go there?
Do you want to go there?
You could. I'm not.
I'm not.
I like my paycheck every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we don't have to go there, but I guess we can.
I'm fine since we work at the
yeah.
same
So
place,
we work at EWTN, Global Catholic TV Network.
Yeah, we're in DC because we work for the News Bureau.
If there's any comments, any problems with things we say, don't go to EWTN. This is not an EWTN production.
Definitely not officially or unofficially affiliated with EWTN at all.
But it's a good job.
It is. I love working for them. The best job I've ever had. So, this is Mark, everyone. And so this week we've been throwing around the idea of what it means to give God our first and our best. That's a conversation that 3 or 4 of us had last week about, all these examples in salvation history and scripture, especially of the people of God taking the best that they have to offer or whatever they get first, and sometimes it's both. And God gets it first before anyone else around them gets anything from them. It goes to God first, and then whatever's left is for themselves, for their families. And so we have examples like the first sacrifice ever mentioned in Scripture, Cain and Abel, and it talks about Abel's sacrifice especially was one of the first lambs. And he brought it before God, and he slaughtered it and put it on the altar. And Genesis was very specific in saying that God favored Abel's sacrifice. And there's all kinds of commentary on why and how it relates to like Cain's sacrifice and stuff. But Abel's sacrifice, it was like he offered God the very best of his flock. And then you have the example of Abraham, who, God asked him to sacrifice his firstborn son. I should say it's not his firstborn son because he had Ishmael first, but Isaac was the one born to him from Sarah who was going to continue his line. He was the son that he had been waiting for, and God was like, I want you to sacrifice him to me as an offering, and this was this kind of, that was a challenge, a test of Abraham's faithfulness, and Abraham was willing to follow through with it. And then obviously we know God stepped in and said, no, you don't have to do that. But, so throughout salvation history, going throughout the Old Testament, even in the New Testament, and then you look at the lives of the saints, and even in modern history, there's all these examples of those who are most faithful to God give us an example of what it means to be devoted to him, because they're giving him the best of the time that they have to offer, the best of their monetary resources that they have to offer, the best of their labor. So, I mean, what do you guys think? How does that kind of tie into today and the struggle that so many of us have, just kind of dragging ourselves to mass every week and stuff? I mean, do you think there's anything there? What can we learn from that?
I think there's a lot there. I don't know where to start.
I know it was a little too heavy on the intro, but
No, I mean, yeah. I just think personally what am I giving, Am I giving the best of myself? How am I using my time? And, I think we're often most critical of ourselves, if we're being honest. At least I can be. And I got a lot of work,
Yeah.
Got a lot of work to do. But, yeah, totally. I mean, the example of just going to mass on Sunday, checking the box, I think we're definitely called to give more than that, right? It's just, what does it look like for us beyond that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think we get stuck with, I went to mass, I did my hour obligation, I say my prayers at night or in the morning, and then it's off with the rest of my day, or whatever my week is. And I was reading the readings the other day, and in the gospel, it talks about helping others. I can't remember off the top of my head, but when he's separating left and right, and he's saying, you gave me water when I thirst, you clothed me when I was naked, you visited me in the prisons. And then the left is like, well, I didn't see you. What are you talking about? And he's like, and what you did for the least ones, you've done for me. And so that's one of the ways I think we could give our all to God, is by, doing the community service, or helping people. If it is doing a prison ministry, or running a food bank, at your church, or even if it's running a men's group at your church to help men, become more spiritually healthy, and physically healthy, and mentally healthy. Those are things that we could do, that's more than just checking that box on Sunday. And I think that's a little bit of giving your all, or giving your most to God, right? Why is it that when we go to work, we give an 8-hour day, we bust our hump, sometimes it's 9, 10, 11, 12 hours, and we forget about everything else. We forget about our family, or our significant other, right? All for work. And we give work everything, but we don't give God more than an hour of an entire week. That's something I think we should all reflect on.
Right. Yeah, I've been thinking a lot lately, because I've kind of been noticing it, not only in myself, but in a few people around me. Just this attitude of even just going to Sunday mass is kind of like a labor. It's like too much or something, and it's like, but then you think, just like in the grand context of things, it's like, it's 1 hour out of 7 full days in a week. It's like the minimum God is asking of us is 1 hour. And this is the one who literally is offering to save our souls from hell. It's like we can't even comprehend the magnitude of that gift. And all he wants in return is a little bit more of our time. And somehow we're basically saying no to that, because we're deciding to fill our time with other things. And I don't know.
I think you got to start somewhere. So I want to be careful. I don't want people to think like fire and brimstone here, or like you're not holy enough or religious enough, because I don't want people to feel that way, because I think sometimes
No, well, like the
yeah,
weekly obligation, sometimes that legitimately is the best we can offer because,
right,
Right.
we have tons of other like serious obligations,
right.
Yeah.
And it's not a competition either. It's not something they keep up with the Joneses. Well, Andrew did 4 things of community service today, so I'm going to do 5, and
Yeah.
God's gonna give me more graces. And it's like, no, God's happy if you are able to carve out one day to do community service, because that's what your schedule permits, because of whatever your schedule is. You're not, it's not you're sitting on the couch for 4 hours watching, nonsensical TV, right? Where that's a little bit different, right? Because you're not giving your best, you're not giving your all to not even God, but just to yourself. I mean, what's the purpose of 8 hours a day, or 4, 5, 6, 7 hours of sitting in front of the TV, right? That's not productive with anything, and especially with all the craziness going on in the world. It's actually more detrimental to your sanity to do that. So you could read a book, or read a religious book or something like that, or pray more. So those are different ways you could give all to stop just sitting and being a slug on the couch, or being a slug on even your work. I mean, how many hours do you need to be in front of your computer? We are contracted to be 9 to 5, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's a little bit more, understandable depending on your work. But you shouldn't be sitting in front of your computer until 10 o'clock at night doing work. You should be with your family or your friends, or if there is a group that's involved in the church, and they meet on Tuesdays, and then do that, because I don't want to sound like I'm repeating myself, but I feel like we're definitely a society now that's either constantly watching the TV, constantly on social media, or I have to get work done, I have to meet this deadline, and it's like there's always a deadline. There's never not a deadline,
Right.
And you're just giving yourself all. You're giving all of yourself to the things that really don't give anything back to you. Your work is supposed to give you a paycheck for working the hours that say in your contract, 9 to 5, 8:30 to 4:30, whatever it is.
Yeah.
That's what they're supposed to pay you for. So they're giving you what they're returning you your for your efforts, but they're not returning anything when you're missing Junior's soccer game. They're not returning anything when your wife is like, I want to go out for dinner, and you're saying, I got a deadline. Where's the return there? There's no return. Then you lose everything for what? For them who once the economy tanks, they're going to let you go. But God never lets you go. He always is there.
Yeah.
And he's always willing to give to you, so you could give somewhat to him in baby steps, and eventually you'll give your whole life, like you were saying earlier with the saints and the martyrs.
Yeah, it's definitely like baby steps, I think. I mean, and like you said, it's not like you have to, quit your day job and, go try to be a martyr or something. But really those small steps, and I think just as I was kind of thinking about this as we're preparing for this, is there's all kind of ways we can give more of our time and the things that we have, and like in some ways it's kind of like just start practicing it, like whatever that looks like. It doesn't even have to be like a formal thing necessarily, but I don't know. I think of people that I encounter every day, whether it's like on the way to work. I mean, we work in the city, and you encounter a lot of people on the streets and stuff, or even in the bigger office space within our offices. And like how often do I just take the time to say hello to a person,
right,
that has seen me, for years. Do I share anything of myself with that person? This great gift of faith that we're talking about right now. I mean, it's kind of, in a way, it's sort of a stingy thing to just hold on to the very fruits and the gifts that I think I have in receiving the gift of truth through the Catholic faith. I mean, I don't know. How am I sharing that with others? And could start with a simple conversation, you know?
Yeah, and and Mark, I think you bring up a good point where, sometimes just talking to somebody or just listening. I mean, you don't,
Right.
and this is what I try to tell people too. I have, just because I'm involved heavily in the church doesn't mean I don't have friends that don't go to church.
Right.
And I think there's a misconception of that. Well, you can't have friends that outside the church. Well, yeah, you can. It doesn't.
You're kind of supposed to.
Exactly right. So he right again earlier in last week with the Gospels. I didn't come for the healthy. I came for the sick.
Mhm.
When the Pharisees are like, why you sit with sinners? You're supposed to go and talk to people that maybe are not practicing in their faith. And you started off slow. You don't say, well, you got to get to church and you got to do that, because that's a turnoff. You tell anybody they got to do something. I don't care what it is. Most times, 9 times out of 10, the person's going to be like, I'm not doing this.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what it is.
For those people, you tell me I have to do something, like, especially when someone tells me, oh, you got to watch this movie on Netflix. I'm
Forget
like,
you.
nah.
Yeah. I'm like, all right. I'll get to it when I get to it. Exactly.
Yeah.
But when you strike a conversation like you're saying, Mark, and sometimes it's just you're listening,
Mm-hmm.
and there's nothing for you to say unless they ask, and then you could slowly introduce them to your faith,
Right.
because I was saying this the other night when I was talking to a few people. I said one of the things that I've learned over the past several years is when you do listen, you just listen, and when there's that pause, you kind of say, okay, God, give me the words to speak back. Like, what is it you need me to tell this person? How do I speak to this person? Because you may think they're ready to hear, oh, go to church and do this, but they're not. God knows they're not ready. So, you could ask God, like, what do you want me to say? And then the words, as he said, I'll give you the words to say. He said that. And I'm so bad at quoting scripture, but I think everybody gets the gist of it.
Yeah.
The where then you could give the comforting word. You could give maybe the answer or the solution that they may be looking for. Or there's nothing and they just give them a hug. Whatever. You don't know. Whatever the situation is. But those are ways, to your point, is how you could give yourself more to God.
I mean,
and it's not rocket science.
Yeah, just that is giving of first fruits in a way. I mean, just being that listening ear, because let's be honest, that's a big gift to a lot of people. A lot of people don't. How many people?
There's profession. There's people that make a lot of money on that. So,
yeah.
Right.
I mean, that's why there's so many people going to therapy.
Right.
It's big.
Right.
You don't gotta like quit your day job and become a therapist, but I think just by giving somebody an ear, that could tell them there's something different about this person, and it could go from there. But
you make a new friend, and you don't know. Maybe that changes the person's life. You don't know, because you don't know what they're going through at that time. And God always sends people in your life, and God sends you in people's life for a purpose, for a reason. I mean, look at what the disciples go out 2 by 2, and to the ends of the earth, they told the story, about Jesus and Jesus on the cross. And now look at 2,000 plus years. Look at what's created by just talking to people, right? Everybody, most people were like, okay, this guy just stood on, okay, whatever. He did all these things, right? There's no movie. Now we have movies. We have things that we could put it, there was no Bible, right? Now there's a Bible. Like there wasn't much except their word, right? There wasn't much to tell them that this is a true story.
Yeah, they basically just had to trust the account.
Right.
Yeah.
So I was thinking of when I went to confession last week, the priest brought up the concept of relationship with Christ, And, you know, growing up evangelical, that was like all I ever heard about. Because that, you know, outside Catholicism, that's pretty much all Christianity tries to teach you is like, you need to have a relationship with Christ. And that's a good thing. You know, they just don't have the sacramental aspect of it. But I've been reflecting on that more because I feel like I've been neglecting that in a lot of ways since becoming Catholic. And that's not because I became Catholic. It's just because I thought I didn't need to put as much effort into it, but I do. And I've been thinking about it in the context of like my relationship with my fiance. Like, if like I want to spend as much time with her as possible, right? That's just like a natural compulsion of mine because I love her. I say that I love her, and my love for her like materializes in, among other things, just wanting to spend time with her. And so I've been kind of like taking that and applying it to like this relationship with Christ. It's like for my entire life, I've said I love Jesus. But what have I really done about that? You know, how many times have I actually gone out of my way to make time for this person? You know,
Right.
Like I do that for my parents. I do that for my fiance. I do that for my friends. But I mean, aside from like a few times here and there, it's like I don't really prioritize them in a way that I should. And you know, and then you know, going back to what we were talking about is like, you know, we don't want to get like too daunting with what we're suggesting to our listeners about like, well, if you're not doing all these things, then you know what you're offering God is trash. Well, it's not. You know, that's not true. You know, like it doesn't even have to necessarily be an active thing. Like we were talking about service projects and stuff. Like that's fantastic, but maybe you don't feel called to service ministry as such. Maybe, you know, because I mean, there's a whole species of religious out there whose charism involves contemplation and prayer. Like they're not actually actively working the streets, you know, like the Dominicans and the Franciscans and stuff, but you have like the Carmelites who spend all their time in prayer and everything. So it's like we can do those things, and it's like we sometimes look at spending time with God as a burden. And it's like it's a chore that we have to do and go through, and it's like, ugh, I don't want to go do whatever for a half hour. But I really think that like as whatever might be an obligation, it's like when you actually do it and you mean to invest it without even necessarily expecting anything in return, I start to notice how it becomes less of a burden. Mm-hmm. You know, it's like going to adoration, for example, at the shrine here in DC, like they have the Blessed Sacrament out on the crypt altar most of the day. And so you can go in there at any time. They have confession like 6 hours a day, which is awesome. And when you're before or after you do that, you can come out and sit in the pews, and you're just in this beautiful, peaceful, quiet crypt church with our Lord out there exposed in the Blessed Sacrament. And I gotta tell you, like the way that like just like sometimes I don't want to leave. Like I'm just sitting there for like 20, 30 minutes maybe before work or something, and it's like it's great. I'm giving that time to God, and I'm not necessarily expecting anything in return because as far as I'm thinking, like he's already given me more than I could ever repay. But I always come away with that with a true sense of like my entire posture has been reoriented. Like if you imagine yourself as a compass, like you're pointing true north now. And I just walk out feeling this really profound sense of peace. Like whatever things have been kind of like tightening my shoulders up that day or whatever, you know, It's like God's peace has just kind of been allowed to spread through me and kind of just remind me that like, hey, you know, your priorities are correct right now in this moment because you're sitting here before my son. Everything else kind of falls into place below that. Yeah. So, you know, it's like it doesn't have to be hard. It doesn't have to be, even substantial in the sense of like you don't have to go sit down for 3 hours in your afternoon in prayer, in like constant prayer even, or whatever. It's just like 20 minutes can make a difference, guys.
Yeah.
Like, seriously.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't even have to be that long,
No.
But just, I'll make this quick point is that, that thing you hear, you can't give what you don't have. I mean, like the point that you're making is like really, I think the most central is when we talk about giving fruits to God, the first fruits, that's giving him time. And we're getting so much more out of it at the end of the day. I mean, because it allows him to just, work even more in our lives, which we need. So, you can go about your day and love others as best you can, but the first thing that we all should do is make sure we're doing it for the right reasons, and it's because that's what God tells us to do. But you got to spend time with them,
Right.
Yeah.
And I notice when I pray every morning, and I notice when I don't, I'm off. I feel off. And if I don't do it for a couple days, I notice like, it's like, it's like if you're prescribed a medication and you don't take that medication for a couple days, your body's like, excuse me, you start feeling sluggish or whatever the medication you're taking, you're starting to feel that what the medication is suppressing. And so, that's where I think to your point, you need to spend the time with him. And if when I notice when I don't, and I don't go to adoration as much as I used to, but in the morning I do my prayer and that's spending time with him. And when I don't, and it goes on for a few days, I feel sluggish. I feel angst. I feel upset and angry and whatever the case may be, or little things start to bother me, and it's because I'm not talking to him. I'm trying to do it my way, or I'm
like getting out of your gym routine or something.
Exactly, and I'm not giving him my all at that point. And when you don't give him your all, that's when our friend likes to come and play and bother you.
Right.
And that's why prayer is so important, because it helps you defend against that.
Yeah.
So.
I think, prayer is, at least for me, it's tough. It's tough, and it's a continued challenge to be disciplined with prayer and really have like consistency with it. And like, this is something I've heard from other people before, and it sounds easy enough, but then, it's actually hard for me to put it in practice. But so I'm gonna say it again, just for anybody who wants to try it, and remind myself too, like, literally, you mentioned 20 minutes. That's great if you can do 20 minutes a day. If you're kind of foreign to the idea of like trying to form a prayerful relationship with Jesus, like 5 minutes a day, literally 5 minutes a day. 3 minutes a day. And I think it's like the intentionality, like God sees that one thing that's helped me is, because I think you're talking about sometimes prayer, or at least it seems like you're saying, can feel like a chore sometimes, or something you have to do. But, I started think of it as like, sometimes I'll start prayer with just like, God, thank you for bringing me here to this moment. It's really God who's doing the direct. It's not me trying to, climb up this hill. I'm just letting him kind of guide me. It's like a change of the mindset or something. It helps me, just to be like, okay, God, thank you for giving me this time to sit here and be with you. And maybe that's 3 minutes, and maybe it's 5 minutes, but it's, I heard just recently someone much holier than me, this sister with the Sisters of Life, saying for, actually it was, I think her name's Sister Faustina. She wrote the Litany of Trust, which is pretty sweet.
She wrote it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Wow. If anybody wants to check it out. But she was saying one Lent, she just like looked at, the image that Faustina was given of Jesus, and I think it's the Sacred Heart. It said, Jesus, I trust you. Or
Yes.
Yeah. So she said she just looked at the face of Christ every day for 5 minutes. And, that's coming from her. That's coming from somebody who's dedicated her life to the Lord. And she said it was powerful, So I think sometimes we can especially think, oh, we're not doing enough, and why aren't we on the same level as these great saints and these martyrs and stuff? And like, hey, it's like working out. You got to build those muscles.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, we were talking the other day, right? Like these great saints and martyrs, they're like the spiritual bodybuilders.
Yeah.
Right now, I can barely,
They're jacked.
yeah,
We're
they're
not.
completely jacked. But you got to build that muscle, and it's okay. Don't feel bad if you're only doing a few minutes a day. Like God will see that as you giving a gift to Him.
Right.
Yeah, and it's funny because when you're saying that, she stared at the face of Jesus for 15 minutes, and I've said on previous podcasts numerous times about, just 5 minutes looking at the crucifix, and
Yeah.
I have these little crucifix. I mean, Drew, you've been to my apartment, and I have a couple little crucifix, and I keep getting them in the mail. They keep coming to me, and listen, I need all the crucifixes I could get, but I have one now on my desk, and like I'll just look at it for like 30 seconds sometimes when maybe work gets a little crazy or somebody's driving you nuts. I take a quick peek at it, and it's like, okay, recenter, get back to okay, God, like, all right, it's not that bad, it's gonna be okay, let's take a deep breath. And it's just that moment of like getting yourself back on track, and so even something like that, as little as that, and what's that, 30 seconds to a minute. And the more you do that, the more, like you said, you're trying to run a marathon. When you go to train for it, you don't run the marathon the first day. You run maybe a half a mile.
Yeah.
Right? You can't run 23 miles on the first day. That's impossible. I mean, you could try, but you're probably going to end up going to the hospital. Like something bad's going to happen, right? So you got to work yourself up to it, and that's what everybody has to understand, is that when you are working yourself up to it, and you are like Mark, even if, like you said, 5 minutes. You are consciously giving that time. You are giving your all for 5 minutes to God. That's a start. He's happy with that.
Mm-hmm.
He's happy with that. And that's what people have to understand. You're not a priest. You're not a Carmelite, right? You're not ordained, and you're going to be, you're a lay person. So a lay person, simply start with prayer. And then from there, that it nurtures. It's like, planting a seed, right? We said about the seeds, right? Mm-hmm. Planting the seeds. That's a seed that starts in the heart, and then it grows. It's the seeds start under the ground. You water it, some sunshine, and they start to sprout. But there has to be a farmer. Now, somebody has to do that. Somebody has to water it. The sun comes up. You're not going to plant the seed in a dark spot where there's no sun. It's not going to grow, right? So you're the farmer of your own seed, and you could do those small little things, and then it will grow, and it'll grow, and it'll grow, and then maybe you're like, I want to be a lector, or maybe I want to do, and then you start giving a little bit more and more and more. But you got to start slow. It's not, slow and steady wins the race. It's you don't train for a marathon in one day. Right. It's not going to work.
And shout out to my brother-in-law too, who just ran a marathon
this
past weekend in Napa Valley.
How'd he do?
I think he did pretty well. I didn't see the results of the race, but I mean, my sister was kind of filling me in at different points over the past several months about his training, and how. What was interesting is she told me something I didn't know before. When you're training for a marathon, at least the like program that he was doing she said he never actually was supposed to run a full distance marathon in training.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and that's something I never heard before.
Yeah.
I've never been like a distance runner or anything like that. Right. So, it was interesting to hear that, and I kind of think that, like, yeah, you work up to these things in training, but there's also, like, maybe we're not always supposed to go to the certain degree that, like, others are going. Like, especially, as laymen, when we compare ourselves to religious, and it's like, well, not only do they have a charism because of the order that they've joined to do what they're doing, but also it's like God's imparted special graces to them for their religious vocation that are probably, going to be different from the graces we've been given.
Right.
So it's like he's created that space in them to do that on a level that may be beyond what we're capable of or supposed to do or whatever. But on that, going on that too, it's like, Jason, you were talking about just staring at your crucifix for like 30 seconds, or Mark, you
Mhm.
mentioned Sister Faustina.
Yeah.
Saint Faustina. Like,
Saint Faustina, but yeah, this was
Sister Faustina wrote the litany.
Sister Faustina, who is actually, she's not a saint. Maybe one day. She's
be
pretty holy.
saintly, yeah. So the idea of just a short amount of time,
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And just looking at some kind of holy image, whether it's a painting, a sculpture, a crucifix, anything like that. I start thinking about like, okay, what does that do? That's taking up space in my mind from something else that might be
other images that come at us.
Right, yeah. And it's like there's this phrase that's floated around over the past couple of years in the political world where like certain groups have been saying we need to take up space. And the idea basically being we need to like make it difficult for other things that that they think aren't good to occupy, right? Well, I mean, maybe we should adopt that same philosophy of like we need God to take up space in our lives.
Yeah.
And let's take all those areas of our lives that might normally be filled with temptation or vice of some kind, and instead fill that space with God, even if it's just sitting on our bed and looking at a poster or a recreation of a painting from the Renaissance era. So I don't know, but the idea just basically like.
Yeah, and I know another hang up can be, and I'll just share this as well, like, like beyond the thinking we have to give a whole lot more time initially, the 5 minutes is great. Another thing I think could be a hang up in giving time to God, giving him the gift of our time in prayer, a hang up being that we think we're not doing it right. We think that we're sitting there for 5 minutes and we could say, well, nothing happened, or what, I didn't feel like I was, as some floating saintly person. I think honestly that's kind of a trick of the devil to make you question that. That's not really the thing. Like you were talking about, you like to spend time with your fiance. I mean, just spending time with her. That doesn't always mean she's going to say something, you're going to say something, there's going to be some sort of revelation.
Right, it's not profound.
It's not. Yeah. It's in the company of someone you love, and like how much more does God want that from us? Just put yourself in his presence, do it over time, totally. and you will. I'm guessing, I've seen it in my own life, I think y'all probably have too, and we're still learning, but you will see the results. It won't be instant. It won't be instant, but like just start there and be okay with it and take it easy on yourself too, but don't give up.
Don't be so scrupulous with it. Don't be so scrupulous. And it's funny because sometimes it's like you will see it. Okay. Right. I've seen things like, and I'm not gonna get into it because there may be some people listening that I'm not gonna get into it. But I've seen things where I've prayed and I've seen the graces and the glory and the mercy of God work through people, and or I'm at mass and the homily. I've actually cried at a few masses because of the homily. I was just like, man, I'm doing what God wants me to do.
Sure.
Yeah.
And that's how it you get your answers. It's like you're praying and you're sitting here and it's like, you're not seeing anything. You may not feel anything. Every once in a while, I feel that the Holy Spirit, the presence, but not every day is it a light, moment in my brain, right? Like Drew, you're getting married in a few weeks, right? So you see your fiance, every day or every other day, whatever the routine is, right? But that moment you see her walking down the aisle, that's going to be that moment, right? It's right. Like she's going to look at you. You're going to look at her differently. She's going to, radiate more. Right. And it's like, but that whole time you were spending time with her, right? For that moment of, for that moment of when she walks down the aisle and meets you at the altar. Right. So that's that profound, like, oh, now I get it. Now I know why I'm doing this.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? And that's
the foundation for it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I think what I was thinking of, Jason, when you were saying that, the moment in church and whatever, it's like kind of a good, diet for us as Catholics, I think, in a way, is like
Me and my fiance went to see the priest today because we're getting married in April. And I was like, me doing what I do for profession. I want to make sure I got all my ducks in a row and not last minute running around and, oh, I forgot this and can't get married. So we met today, and when we were leaving, he said, here's what I want you to do. He's like, prayer is good. He's like, it's great that you guys pray, but spend time with each other. I want you to spend time. And it's funny that you said that, Drew, because I think I've been telling you that for so long, like, spend time. Like, you guys, when we had some new couples and we have some couples in our circle, I'm like, you have to spend time, and you have to spend a lot of time with each other, because you're building that foundation. And if you don't spend time, how do you get to know the person, right?
Yeah.
It's like, how do you get to actually know them if you don't physically spend time with them? So you could take that into contents of prayer, right? So you could say, all right, thanks God for getting me up. And then for the rest of the day, you don't see God.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So that's okay. And then, and then you go to church and you're like, you have you do Mass on Wednesday, or on Sunday, you check that box. But to your point, Mark, was anything enlightening? Did you hear anything from the readings? Did you get anything out of the gospel? Did you understand the homily? Or were you just, I had Mass today? That's a very hard relationship to keep going when you're not spending time with God one-on-one, either 5-10 minutes with prayer, like legit prayer, right? Not thanks God for getting me up today. That's a start, but you need to do a little bit more than that, right?
Yeah.
And having that relationship. And so when you go to Mass, because we're celebrating the marriage, like, the basically the wedding, like how's it described? It's not the marriage, but you know what I'm saying, like the
Trinity? Are you talking about
yeah, well, like Mass, like you're celebrating, like,
the incarnation? I mean,
yeah, like there's somebody told me something, almost like you're like, I don't want to say the marriage of the Mass or whatever, but somebody said something to me once. I can't remember how they said it. Yeah, so yeah, it was something like alluding to that.
Yeah.
It was alluding to that, but it was said so much better. I wish I could remember exactly how it was said. But it is that, as you're going to see in 2 weeks, like that, like, wow, this is what I'm going to spend right. Like, I'm going to spend the rest of my life with this person. Right. But you built that foundation by hanging out with each other. And he also said to us, he's like, the weddings that he remembers that he presided over is the ones where he feels and sees the love of the bride and the groom amongst all the chaos of a wedding. He says the ones that he remembers is the love that he sees, and people see it. Yeah. They see it when it's not there, and they see it when it is there. And that's also going back to, because they built a foundation, you can see that love. And if you build that foundation with God, people will see the love of God through you, because you've built that foundation with him, because you spent time with him. Mm-hmm. So Mark, like you were saying in confession, I was like, you were praying, or this is something the priest didn't even know.
Right.
And here it is. And it was like, the priest, he knows me, but he doesn't know I had this conversation with
Holy Spirit.
Like,
it's the Holy Spirit working.
Yeah, like, and all the guys, you guys got to hang out. I know, someone's long distance and this and that, but you got to figure out how to hang out. You got to, from past experiences, myself personally, if you don't hang out, it's hard. It's hard. And it's the same thing. If you don't give, and it was just funny that he said that, it's like, if you don't give time to God and hang out with God, the relationship is very hard, and it's very hard to live harmoniously if your relationship is fractured. And so you have to start by hanging out with God. 5 minutes a day, I think, is a good place to start.
Yeah.
Well, and you look at the inverse of like, if you're just going through the motions, whether it's your relationship with God or your relationship with a friend or your fiance or whoever, if you're just going through the motions, it's going to starve that relationship, frankly. I mean, plain and simple. That it's going to, just keel over one day, and because it has nothing to sustain it. So I mean, it's pretty simple. Like, you got to feed it.
Yeah. You can't expect the plant to grow and stay strong if you don't water it. Right? It needs water. It's proper soil. Like, you got to. So yeah. So in I think, right, that's also to your point of giving your all. You got to work on it, and it's work. And anything you want in life is work. You just have to ask yourself, is it worth my time? And God is worth
always
every moment of your time.
Yeah.
But 8 hours on, 8 hours watching TV, is that really worth your time?
Cut out an hour of that 8 hours.
Right. Cut out an hour, half hour. Right.
Hey, start by cutting out 5 minutes of that.
Yeah.
Right.
And work your way back.
Yeah. And work your way backwards.
And I think, with this too, like I say again, I think, and maybe a lot of guys struggle with it. I know too. Is realize you're going to have to put in an effort, but also be easy on yourself in a way. You're going to fall, you're going to make mistakes, and God, if anything, he's a merciful God, right? He forgives us, and don't let your shortcomings and your failures keep you from giving more to God. Like, you're going to hit those road bumps, but keep going, persevere.
Right.
Like, always remember that. Like, it's never too late to start either.
Nope.
Right.
But whatever goal you set for yourself, I mean, and we do encourage people to set goals, just make sure they're reasonable and that they're achievable, so that you can actually have that psychological reward too of achieving that goal, and then continue forward from there. But like Mark said, don't beat yourself up if you come up short on that goal.
And don't try to be. I don't want this to sound the wrong way, but I think it's setting something realistic so that you psychologically you achieve your goal. So I think sometimes perfection. Yeah. Right. People try to be perfect or put on a show of perfection, and I'm perfect, and it's like, you're not perfect. Everybody is not perfect. There's only one perfect person, and that's God. No, we're not perfect, and so don't put yourself in that psychological situation where you're pretending to be perfect, or think you're perfect, or try to be perfect. Look, we could work towards perfection, but setting goals is a way to work towards perfection. And if we stumble and fall, that's why we have confession. And it's okay. It's like, Drew, you stumble and fall. I'm not going to say, oh man, this guy, Drew, he's not a good Catholic. This guy, he's a hypocrite. He's this, he's that. No, he's a good guy. He just fell. Now, if you did something really stupid and I have to drive down there and beat you up, that's a different story. but all kidding aside, we all sin, and we that's why we have the God's mercy is so great. That's why we have he's established confession, and which is wonderful. And we're all sinners, and that's who God came to rescue. And setting the realistic goals to work towards perfection, which we all want to get to one day. But please know that you are not perfect, and that's okay. It's okay that you're not perfect, because God loves you anyway.
Totally.
Like the man Rocky says, it's not about how hard you get hit. It's about how hard you get hit and get back up.
Yeah, the greatest line ever.
Yeah, I think it might have been.
That was Rocky 25, I think.
Yeah. And I mean, going back to it again, like, this is all giving to God our first fruits. I can't think of anything better than to give of ourselves, give of our time, and to give him, the ability to really continue forming this relationship with us by us giving time in prayer, I think. And, like we say, when we fall, you have the sacrament, you have confession. I think also we need to be okay with that, because that's like a reminder for us to really rely on God alone.
God,
like,
yep.
We can't like just white knuckle this and do it ourselves. Like I think he reminds us sometimes with that we need his mercy, that we need to return to him, because otherwise you get prideful and think, oh, look at me, I'm doing a great job. I mean, often if I am in a good state or a good, phase of praying and stuff, and I might think of myself as, oh, I'm high and mighty. Oh, and then look, I'm falling back into habits and sins and stuff. And it's a reminder, no, it's not me here. It's God giving me the grace. And just kind of like a way to think about it as well. Like to not to be discouraged.
Right.
Absolutely.
Giving of yourself. Sacrifice.
So I think that might be a good place to tie it off. You guys want to deliver any parting shots before we call it?
I think that's good.
Yeah.
I think we're good. I think 5 minutes. I think a good to really sum up giving your first is 5 minutes. First the day you wake up, you have your coffee. Obviously, thank God that you have another blessed day on this earth. Thank him for all the blessings you have, and also the crosses that you have. Those are things to thank God too. And then starting off with 5 minutes, just maybe Our Father, Hail Mary, or something like that.
Sure.
Start with that, and work your way up. And it's okay if you struggle a little bit, but know that God appreciates that 5 minutes to start with.
A good place to start. We can, our listeners, if you guys want, you can look up something called the Heroic Minute. It's something Father Mike Schmidt talks about briefly, where it's just in that first minute when your alarm goes off in the morning, instead of just grabbing your phone and scrolling through Twitter or whatever, you actually get up out of bed. And that it can be the hardest thing ever, but it also
that is hard.
Sets your mind like in a very disciplined place, and you can use that heroic minute to start, take a step forward in your goal of giving a little more time to God. So
absolutely.
All right, everyone, thanks for tuning in. Mark, we're glad you're here.
Hey, glad to be here. This has been great for me. Anytime you get together with people and talk about these things, it's kind of like a spiritual boost, right?
Yeah.
So I'm more motivated now. Now to spend that 5 minutes than I was
Lord knows
earlier.
We need it because we're doing Exodus 90 and it's hard. So
thank you guys for having me.
Thanks for everyone for tuning in. If you like what you're hearing, click the subscribe or the follow button, like it, leave reviews, leave comments if you can. We're on Apple, Google, supposed to be on Spotify. I'm not sure if that's true. YouTube, and our host Podbean. So you can find us pretty much in any of those places. And we just catch us next time. We're a monthly podcast, and we try to deliver content at the beginning of every month. Sweet. And with that, we'll just say, St. Joseph, pray for us.
Pray for us.
Pray for us.